we have a window of opportunity where this can still be resolved diplomatically. That's not just my view. That's the view of our top intelligence officials. It's the view of top Israeli intelligence officials. And as a consequence, we are going to continue to apply the pressure, even as we provide a door for the Iranian regime to walk through where they could rejoin the community of nations by giving assurances to the international community that they're meeting their obligations and they are not pursuing a nuclear weapon.
Okay, that's President Obama at the White House earlier today talking about Iran. Apparently we have a window, but we have a door for Iran. We got a Laura Meckler now with the Wall Street Journal in Washington, D.C. to discuss this further. How did that speech play in Washington, D.C. When he was talking about Iran?
Well, his comments are along the lines of what we just heard about giving Iran an opportunity to still choose a diplomatic course. Were really not news. We've heard that from him over the last several days. What I think got most Washington people talking was that he responded directly to the criticism he's been getting from Republican presidential candidates on this matter. And he basically shot them down and said that they're playing politics with a very serious issue. If they think we should go to war, they should just say so, that there are young men and women's lives on the line, and that this is serious business.
I think it's also true, Laura, when you say that the president is walking a very fine line here, obviously, because he has to worry about the voters at home and that criticism. He has to worry about Israel and whether or not they feel like we're on their side. We have a fragile relationship there. And then, of course, you have to worry about Iran and what's really going to happen there. So the president, and I thought it was interesting, the way he answered the other questions that we heard earlier in the show versus this, he seemed a little more careful and calculated, like, I have to get this one right.
I absolutely think that's true. It is a very fine line, and this is serious business, which was essentially what he was saying, is that when you're running for president, when you're just a candidate, you can say whatever you want. But when you are president, it's for real. You're playing with live ammunition here. So he did walk a very careful line. He wants very much for this diplomatic effort to succeed. He said we'll know soon whether Iran is serious about this, but that we shouldn't be putting these artificial timetables on there to say, we got to make a decision about whether we're going to war in a week or in 2 weeks or in a month. He wants to give this time to work. Of course, at the same time, Israel, as you said, is very nervous. So he is trying to balance a lot of competing factors.
If war or a military solution is an alternative, you've got to believe, though, that they're thinking about how that would play out, right?
Well, I'm sure that they are, and he's always said that all options are on the table, and he says that when he says that, he means it. So there's no doubt that kind of planning and contingency thinking is going on. But they don't want a war in Iran. They're not eager for this to happen for all sorts of reasons, not just political, but also just this is, as we've learned, it's a lot easier to start a war in the Middle East or anywhere for that matter than it is to end one. So I don't think that he's real eager to get this going. He wants it to work and is trying to make it work. But at the same time, he can't be seen as being soft on Iran, both because he wants Iran to take his threat seriously and for also political purposes.
I know we haven't got much time, but I also want to hear what he said about Syria. So if we could play that very quickly.
What's happening in Syria is heartbreaking and outrageous. And what you've seen is the international community mobilize against the Assad regime. And it's not a question of when Assad leaves or if Assad leaves, it's a question of when.
Okay, that was President Obama speaking at the White House about Syria there. And Laura, we've got about 20 seconds. So clearly not happy there, but not committing to do anything militarily yet.
Right. He tried to distinguish this from the situation in Libya, said that there was an international consensus to go in and have military action there, that the situation was different than it is now. Of course, there are calls to have similar action in Syria now from John McCain and others. He's again walking a fine line on Syria.